Welcome. You're listening to ElevateTALKS, a show designed to support the education and leadership goals of today's bankers. I'm your host, Michael Delucchi, and it's my pleasure to join you on your professional and personal journey to the top. Welcome to the very first episode of ElevateTALKS. Today, I'm so excited to welcome our very first guest, business growth expert and great friend, Meridith Elliott Powell. Meridith will be sharing with us her thoughts and insights on successful succession planning, how to create a corporate culture that embraces the importance of succession, and how young leaders need to insert themselves into their company's succession plan to move their careers forward. Meridith is an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and business coach. She has a background in corporate sales and leadership and has worked in the industries of healthcare, finance, and of course, banking. In fact, she has spoken for and worked with many banks and banking associations, including working with me on several events over the past 4 years. She's one of my favorite people and favorite speakers. She's a certified speaking professional, which is only 12% of speakers worldwide have that designation. And she speaks on topics such as sales, employee engagement, managing change, communication, growing in any economy, and of course, leadership. Today, we get to talk to her about all of these things and something so relevant to the banking industry right now, and that's succession planning. Welcome, Meridith, and it's so great to have you here today.
Thank you. I've got to tell you, I'm honored to be your first guest.
We're thrilled to have you. You've been speaking and writing for several years now. Tell me a little bit, how did you make that change from corporate into the speaking and writing arena, and what motivated you to do that, and how's that journey gone?
You know, it's funny because it's not anything I ever thought that I would do. When I left corporate and I left banking, I had been working in pretty much every position you could have in the bank. And I left to become a strategist, to go out on my own and do some of the things that I had done for the bank, really just helping all kinds of businesses take their business to the next level. And I had a lot of luck in the companies that I worked with. They did really well and people really bought in. And people would say, would you come talk to us? And I would talk to the Rotary Club, or I'd talk to the Kiwanis Club. I didn't even know that speaking was a thing. And slowly that, I would get an opportunity to maybe speak at a corporate event or something. But really the pivot came for me is that when I in 2008. It's kind of not a great year for most people, but for me, it was really a breakout year because it was when I really noticed that things and how you grow a business, how you grow an organization, how you motivate people, what your customers want, all changed. And I wrote my first book in 2009 all about that. And that was all she wrote. I just started writing and speaking pretty much from there. That's
fantastic. You've spoken with us for many times at some of my events that I've done. What are some of your most passionate messages that you go out and speak about?
A lot of things that I would say that my most requested, and it is one I'm pretty passionate about. I just spoke about it earlier today, and that is redefining how we lead organizations today, and really what it takes to understand what's going on with today's employees and what you've really got to do to engage them. So that one is most requested. But the one I'm really passionate about right now, there's two, and one is that you mentioned is succession planning, because it's really bigger than just creating that next level of leader. I'm passionate about helping people create cultures of succession. And the other is that really learning how to thrive in the age of uncertainty. I mean, we are trying to grow financial institutions in a time where we've got no idea what's going to happen with technology, with customers, with competition, with regulation. I mean, so how do you figure out and how do you navigate that? And that's kind of my expertise, is helping people navigate that and go from being a victim to it to really making everything start working for you.
That's great. That's great. I know you've talked with some of our events on change and leadership and all of that, and you've always focused in on that and really engaged those folks. You had mentioned your books, and I think this will be your fourth book. That's fantastic. What led you to the recent focus on succession planning? Was there any turning point or just from conversations with talking with folks?
We know it's so much like what you do, Mike, and what so many of your listeners do. I mean, if you really want to grow and you want to do well in anything, you listen to your customers, right? And every time I would go to a conference or anytime I would engage people and say, tell me what are you worried about? It went from being worried about finding talent to, oh my gosh, most of our senior leadership is leaving and we don't have anybody to take their place. And so it really became born of the fact that I just heard so many people, talking about it. And I really do think we are in crisis mode with succession planning.
Your approach to the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, you took it from doing success stories or doing kind of stories of different businesses that were having challenges with succession planning and really took it from a story perspective. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very much a story perspective. I'm so glad you brought that up because not only is it a story perspective, but we really took it to another level, and you'll see very elaborate succession plans in there from big companies that have the resources, the time and the talent to the small operation that had to figure out how to create a succession plan basically by adding no extra resources or no extra staff. So no matter what the challenge is that you're facing or what size your business is, this book really answers it all and makes succession planning easy, which is a subtitle of the book, for everybody.
Right. You had mentioned time, and you recently did a webinar on succession planning that I was part of, and you talked about like 4 different categories: talent, time, training, and emotion. Of those 4, I think they're all probably important. I think it was what I gathered from you. But is there any one particular one that you found when working with the different folks that was the biggest challenge when doing the succession planning?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely it's emotion. It's emotion / mindset. I mean, you've got to. I'm working with a company right now, and it is a literal succession where a daughter's taken over from her father, and now her father has left the company. He's done. He's going to retire. He's not coming back in. And she's 39 years old. And she, I said, well, we've got to find your successor. And she looked at me like I was crazy. And she said, I'm not thinking about retiring. And I said, well, there you go. I mean, you shouldn't think of succession planning as retiring. Number one, your business may grow and you may need to do different things. The other is something could happen, even if you've got to walk away for a month, even if you never know. And so it's getting over that emotion and getting the mindset of really understanding that the best thing you can do for your customers, the best thing you can do for your employees is creating sustainability with your business. And that starts with a good succession plan.
Right. And I think you had mentioned also that from the ages 18 to 34, there's such a big focus and priority on feeling like you're part of a plan, like there is a pathway there. So I think from a retention standpoint too, that's probably something that you found, or at least in your studies, that found that was pretty important from holding on to good people when you've got them.
It's funny. Everybody can complains about the younger generation and the fact that they don't stay around. They don't commit for a very long time. And what people have really got to understand, those of us especially who are over the age of 50, is that when we were growing up, we really grew up in a world where we believed if we worked hard, we could stay at that job as long as we wanted to. Like the job would take care of us if we did our job. And young people don't believe that anymore. And nobody does. I don't care if you're 60 years old. But if you don't have a path that says, I have a future for you here, it doesn't mean you're going to go from 0 to 60 in 5 years, but I'm going to invest and develop you, then your employees will start to develop, to invest back in you. So succession is really important from a retention and a growth standpoint.
Right. Well, and from a banking perspective, the regulators, it's one of the requirements that every bank has a succession plan. And a lot of times, they'll get the check mark for the regulators and then it goes up on a shelf. But from your perspective, it's really about kind of building on that, keeping that dusted off, and kind of building a culture and communication around it. Correct?
Yeah, it's the presentation I was giving earlier today. I had a room full of CEOs, and I basically said, "Do you realize the only competitive advantage you have left, the only one, is the talent that you surround yourself with? That's it. There's not a product that you can create or sell. There isn't a competitive advantage you can try to create. There's nothing that you do that a competitor can't do, won't do, or couldn't do. So the only thing that you've got is to surround yourself with the best and the brightest." So then the question becomes, if they are the best and the brightest, why are they going to stay on board if there isn't a future there for them? And future doesn't have to mean CEO. All it means is, are they growing? Are they developing? Are they challenged? Are there things that they are learning that they're excited about? And if you do that, you're going to come out the winner.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been traveling, visiting with a lot of banks lately, and I met with one in Arizona that really got that. They had their head of marketing is out of Washington. Their head of IT's in California. They've got another executive in Las Vegas, and they're proud. They really tout that they've got a team of 30-plus-year-old execs that are the future of that bank. And so, versus a rural bank that maybe has a hard time of attracting people into the area because of where they're located or because of the size of their town or that type of thing. So it's nice seeing bankers starting to shift that mindset. You've also got, fourth, fifth generation family banks as well. That's a different type of succession plan there. So it's definitely an interesting time in the industry for sure.
Yeah, and you're bringing up such a great point. Is you really do have to get out of your own way, in the sense of, I have people say to me all the time, well, I can't find somebody that's in our community, or these young kids, I don't know what's wrong with them. They want work-life balance. Well, it's the reality, and you bend and you flex and you change for really good customers. You've got to learn to bend and flex and change for really good employees. Here's the beautiful piece of that, though. You are going to get it back tenfold. You get out of your comfort zone a little bit, you're going to be amazed at what you're going to get back for it.
Right. And with today's technology, I think it's a little bit easier to do than ever before, probably too.
Absolutely.
For someone who's younger in their career that is trying to implement themselves into a succession plan, do you have any suggestions there for someone who wants to be at least considered or to get that growth plan of something like that in their bank?
Yes. It's, first of all, wake up, because you're probably going to have to be the one who's going to take charge of your own career. I work a lot with next level talent, younger people who really, even the company has identified them as somebody who really has a future. And you would think that once you've been identified, you sort of think, okay, somebody's going to come down and somebody's going to help me shape my career and take me to the next level. But what you need to understand is people are busy. Your leaders are busy. And as much as they would like to prioritize your development in your career, it's not always going to be at the top of their to-do list. Regulators show up and they are not going to be focused on your career. So you need to grab the bull by the horns and really take charge yourself. And the first thing I tell people is, don't even raise your hand for growth and development until you have excelled at the job that you're in. I don't care if you don't like what you're doing. You need to excel at it, because we tell people with our actions how we perform in this job, what it's going to look like going forward. But the other is, you need to be clear about what you want, clear about what you want to learn, do the job you've got now well, and then go and sit down with your boss, let them know that you want a future with this financial institution, and ask them what's required of you to get to the next level. And don't be surprised if it's some basic stuff. But if you do those things and you raise your hand and you perform on everything they ask you to, the door will be open for you. But you've got to take charge.
Right. Great points. Great points. You and I have worked over the years in banking, in the banking sector. You've been in banking. You know the industry fairly well. Anything that you can give guidance to today's leaders in banking as they're running their banks?
Yeah, I think that there's, first of all, I think there's a lot. I realize that banks have so much pressure on themselves. Gosh, Mike, so much has changed since I left the industry. I worked for a bank that was 80% loan to deposit ratio, very, very conservative. And now when I keep in touch with my colleagues who are still there, even a bank like that has got to have a regulator inside. It's got to have the regulators. I'm just blown away by the level of regulation and things that have hit that. But it isn't, I would think the biggest piece of advice is the fact that, banking isn't necessarily the way that it looks right now, isn't as sexy an industry to young people. And I think that the banking industry needs to reignite what an important and great opportunity it is for young people. But I do think that some of the things that they're going to need to do around that is get outside of the box on some of the job descriptions and be more open to allowing people to not be so locked into exactly an 8 to 5 type of a job. Because when I go into financial institutions right now, I think that one of the biggest things that I don't know that they're focused on, that they need to be focused on, is artificial intelligence and technology is going to take away the transaction. And when it takes away the transaction, you're going to need critical thinkers on your staff. You're not going to need transaction people. And most banks are still filled with a mindset of a transaction person, whether it's a teller, a customer service rep, even a loan officer who takes an application. And what you're going to need to have are problem solvers who not only can think and are proactive, but also understand how to interact and support artificial intelligence. Because I don't think artificial intelligence is going to take away customer service. I think it is going to expand the need for it.
I think you're spot on there. I'm hoping to dedicate an episode in the next few weeks just on AI and banking and the effect that it's having, because I know the regulators are looking at that to change the examination. So the bankers should definitely be looking at the kind of people that they're hiring. I couldn't agree more with you there. Meridith, this has been great. One of the things that we did a few months back is we did a survey of different questions to ask successful leaders and came up with what we call the Elevate. So the 8 leadership questions. I'm not going to ask you all 8, but I'd love to ask you a couple of them since I've got you on the podcast today. One of them would be, what is one mistake you see leaders making more frequently than others?
Oh, one of the biggest that, boy, if I have to narrow it down to one, is that they're the biggest thing the biggest mistake I see them making right now is that they are still putting talent development into the human resources department, and instead of it being the job of the CEO. We have moved into a time where the talent, again, is the only thing that you've got that is giving you competitive advantage. This is not something that can be delegated. When I was researching the book that I've got coming out next year on how to succeed in an uncertain marketplace, it's been fascinating to me that the only thing those companies have in common is the CEO has taken over the responsibility of culture and talent.
Oh, that'll be great. One of the next ones I had here, and this is probably a little bit pertinent. I saw one of your posts on your blog today. You were talking about your morning routine and things like that. And so this question is, how do you maintain your daily motivation and inspiration despite obstacles, pushback, and setbacks?
It is definitely my morning routine. And Mike, it's so funny because I am just a go at 100 miles an hour type of person. Really? And I'm type A. Yeah, I know you find that jogging. I like to get up and I like to get it done. But a few years ago, I gave in to this idea of a morning routine where I meditate, I read my goals, I make sales calls, and I exercise. And all of that has to be done before my typical day starts. And if I get away from it, I can feel it. And it keeps me very centered. It keeps me very focused. I also free up some point in the day that is either family or friend time.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is keeping that balance. That's smart.
Yeah. And here's the thing is I feel like keeping the balance keeps me more productive.
100%. Yeah. And to your point, I definitely have a morning routine. And when I'm not doing it or traveling or something disrupts that nice flow, it just doesn't feel right the whole day for sure. And I try the meditation. That's probably my hardest part though, is that it's calming the mind and centering,
Yeah. Well, I'm not that impressive. I don't do it for very long.
I do 5 minutes. So I think you said on your video today, you do 10. So you got me beat. I'm working my way up there.
You'll get there.
Yeah. Well, Meridith, this has been great. I really thank you so much for being part of and being our first guest on Elevate Talks. And where can people find you if they want to find out some more information?
Well, they can definitely find me on my website, which is valuespeaker.com, just the words value and speaker.com. You can definitely find me on all the social media sites. I tend to live on LinkedIn, and I really invite people to reach out. I have all kinds of tools and resources and videos and things on my website, and this has just been fantastic. It really has been great being a part of this, Mike.
Fantastic. Well, that'll do it for our first episode of Elevate Talks. If you'd like some more information about Meridith and also to get a link to the succession planning webinar we talked about and other resources for succession planning, please make sure you visit our show notes page. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you next week on Elevate Talks.
Great.
You have been listening to Elevate Talks, a weekly podcast created with the Elevate mission in mind, which is to educate, connect, and inspire bankers. For more information on Elevate, go to ElevateBankers.com, where you can find show notes from this episode and learn all about our 2020 conferences specifically designed for banking leaders. And don't forget, the Elevate Bankers Conference will be held April 14th through the 17th in Las Vegas, Nevada. Visit ElevateBankers.com and register today for this one-of-a-kind banking program designed for bankers in the areas of compliance, technology, finance, lending, marketing, and human resources. I'm your host, Michael Delucchi, and I hope you subscribe to our podcast. And until next week, I will see you at the top.